Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rock and Roll podcast. Check out this record. This is the show where we educate you out there on bands you should give a listen to, and in response, get called hipsters in the process. And if you're watching the video, you can see that we are clearly not. My name is Frank, and with me is the rowdy one himself, Mark.
Oh yeah, Frank. We're as hip as a pair of jeans after Labor Day. Oh yeah.
You can always find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts, and YouTube.
But when you ask, does this great podcast drop? Great question. Thank you for asking. New episodes drop each and every, say Friday-ish.
There you go. And if you're hearing us for the first time, welcome. We review records. We rip the shit out of crap bands. We also have lots of musical discussions. And don't worry, we will never tell you what is best. We will just tell you what our favorites are. We do spotlight series on bands and even look at some mysteries in the rock world.
Okay, so you're definitely going to want to check out our Versus series where Frank and I will duke it out on behalf of a band or an album for a little thing that we like to call Total Stereo.
Nice. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So awesome. While you're checking stuff out, be sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Hopefully these episodes will leave you wanting more of our musical goodness. And if you have a record you want us to check out, just drop us a comment wherever you find us. So Mark, you pop open the can of your soda or sparkling water and out comes Crocodile, the debut record from Echo and the Bunnymen. Now, some of that soda spills a little, but as you taste it, it takes you back to a sound of new wave and post-punk of the 80s. Bands like Cure, Joy Division, New Order, maybe some psychedelic furs come to the palate. But this is a little different, right? Your initial reaction and perhaps your go-to thoughts of bands from this era all sounding like Cure.
Yeah, so let's pop that can of pop, right? I had essentially skipped most of those bands, including Echo and the Bunnymen, because I assumed that they all sounded a lot like what I assume the Cure sounds like, and I just don't really care. And while that was kind of obviously a broad generalization of the time frame, as we get into the thick of the 80s, sonically, you can hear a lot of similarities between all of those bands. But when it comes to this album, right on the cusp of the 80s, it still had a great deal of 70s inspired underground rock that hadn't fully taken shape that most of us associate with the rest of those bands, right? So it was really cool to kind of start here with Echo and the Bunnymen and dismantle some of my preconceived notions about this subgenre, maybe as a whole.
Absolutely, man. So who is Echo and the Bunnymen? Well, let's go ahead. Yeah. Well, singer Ian McCulloch in Liverpool, England in 1977 was in a band called Crucial 3 that lasted a whole 6 weeks. Now, McCulloch then formed another short-lived group called A Shadow Madness with drummer Dave Pickett and organist Paul Simpson and guitarist Julian Cope. I did say. Now, Cope would fire actually McCulloch from the band, and they would change their name to the Teardrop Express. Right? We're actually they have a name for themselves too if you check them out. Now McCulloch would then join forces with guitarist Will Sergeant and bass player Les Pattinson, and thus Echo and the Bunnymen were formed. The name was from Sergeant making these ridiculous band names, and even though they thought that Echo and the Bunnymen was stupid, they just rolled with it. Mark, we had a few band names back in the day. If you had to rank them, what would that look like?
33 by Destroyers. I don't know. I think MFC was my favorite because it was just us and we wanted to smash stuff, right? And the 33 was cool because it sounded like a muscle car and a record player.
True.
Ed and Spaghetti was a joke name that I'll just never live down. And Failure by Design, you guys kind of had already when I joined the band. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It wasn't something I'd have picked for myself. So I think I've avoided answering that question, but kind of answered it.
There you go. Moving right along. The band early on would use a drum machine And in 78, the band opened for Ian's former bandmates, the Teardrop Express.
Oh.
The band's debut single, Pictures on My Wall, would be released, and also the tune Read It in Books, also recorded, though, by Teardrop Express 6 months later. Now, McCullough would deny that Julie and Cope had a hand in writing the song. Now, as the band was gaining attention, they would record the debut album. This album we're talking about, Crocodiles, released July of 1980. By then, that old drum machine was replaced by right, by Trinidadian born Pete De Freitas. Now, Pete was a welcome addition to the band because he actually came from an affluent background, attending private schools, where the other members came from working class background. So they really liked how it was a meshing of different perspectives. The cover of this album, Mark, shows the band in a gothic woodland with the members in despair and confusion. So, Mark, are you ready to walk into this crocodile's mouth?
I'll be your crocodile if you'll be my Dundee.
Yes. Okay. First track, Going Up. We get a dark and building intro, and in comes these jangly guitars with Ian's voice. It doesn't have that deep tone or the happy, sad vibe of Cure or Joy Division. His tone really creates a great yin and yang effect with this tune. Mark, are you going up on this track?
Yeah. We get that kind of disorienting intro out of like an old horror movie, it feels like, but it's totally just him on his guitar, right? Then that like the drum and bass build to that kind of like really just gorgeous jangly guitar part. It's actually a pretty rockin' number at its core. Then there's this outro that's basically like the last 2 minutes of the song, but you don't feel like it you don't feel like it's dragging out, right? Ian kind of switches lyrical motifs and like starts talking about the flowers in the hair or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
Perhaps maybe a statement on how the hippie ideals have waned.
Yeah.
Right. Certainly in 1980, we're 10 years away from the 60s. Like,
yeah.
There's no reason to assume he wouldn't have been thinking about that. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good perspective. Track 2, Do It Clean.
Yes,
listen, the minute the drums, guitar, bass, and organ hit, I knew this song was going to be special. Sure, this is new wave, but the song is able to capture the vibes of rock mixed with some hints of British 70s punk even. I thought I used to think the lyric, he was saying a handful of this. I always thought it was a handful of piss, but it's not. However, what is Ian doing clean? Is this drugs perhaps? Who knows? But Mark, are you doing it clean?
Oh yeah, buddy. I don't like that dirty. No. I feel like drugs is maybe the obvious answer, but I couldn't say for sure. And I totally love that kind of ambiguity of this song. It feels obvious, right? But it isn't. And it keeps the song really approachable for not giving us this blatant song about drugs. It kind of keeps it in that, well, maybe we're winking at it, but you don't mind me saying a little proto Oblivions here too, Frank, right? Definitely you can tell that the Oblivions were keeping it clean.
Absolutely, man. Track 3, Stars Are Stars. Pattinson's bass lines are really carrying the song here. Lots of tightness mixed with blood cold guitars. And then we get these brighter chords, which is really a good mix. McCullough would say that he used to look up in the sky and felt like it was a big movie camera up there, alluding to his desire to be famous. Mark, I'm really digging this track. What about you?
I am. It's so clean, and those harmonies are just absolutely haunting. Really cool track. Listening to this and looking at the cover, you really connect with the feeling the band was trying to convey.
Absolutely, dude. Without a doubt. Track 4 is Pride. Interesting track with mentions of his mother, sister, dad, brother, friends, John, Barry, Peter, and Julie. Again, it's dark and the band doesn't hide their instruments. So they're not like layering it with all this other stuff. Like they're letting the guitars be known. They're nice and audible for us to hear. Mark, these tracks go fast, but are you liking this one too?
I do like this one. I thought it was about Tom Waits.
Oh,
until I read the lyrics, right? Because just the way he's firing off names, I was like, did he say Tom Waits?
Yeah.
But can ears have dyslexia? Because mine do. Anyways, the pacings of the songs has really been great. Going Up has that kind of long outro I mentioned, but it's worked in establishing the mood of the record, and felt like it could have been a separate track if they wanted, but clearly they
Yes.
didn't want to. They kind of wanted to really give this album a little bit of space here and there, and it's really interesting because we get a couple of these shorter tracks and it really works off. So I mean, here we're at track 4, and I still feel like the album's moving right along, and Pride is such an interesting look at how he views Pride based on what others want or need from him. I
Right.
think this is a really cool track.
Yeah, totally. Track 5, Monkeys, another haunting tune, man. And again, it strikes this balance between like melody, despair, and the ability to get loud. I attempted to research the name Kimon that they
Mhm.
keep saying, and it is a monkey, but it's a rapping monkey in a
Oh,
kids show in India. So I don't think there's a relation because that show is pretty recent. Mark, what say you on this one?
so I actually looked up the word Bagsy
Oh,
because that's what threw me off before it came on. Right, immediately I
right.
was like, I don't understand what Bagsy is. So Bagsy is the
Uh-huh.
English equivalent of calling dibs or shotgun here, as we do in the States, to
Oh,
say that, oh, I'm calling the rights to that.
yeah.
I'll Bagsy yours if you'll Bagsy mine. Then there's the line, boys are the same, brains in their pockets. He's talking about penises there, right?
Yeah, I would assume
I
so.
still don't know what or who came on might be, but I think the song is about the young ones banging it out for the first time, and trying to make that connection, right? Of like, hey, let's do this together. So it feels kind of weird saying this, but I dig this track.
Oh, so good.
It's got that weird kind of 80s new wave dark vibe to it, and I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Yep.
really cool. Title track here, Crocodiles. Again, this title track picks up the tempo and really gives us a taste of the fastness that this band has for their brand of like this post punk, and they deliver. The verses almost have like a rockabilly feel to it, and we get this low note, wistful transition before we get back to the verses. Really cool song and a good representation for the record. Mark, you liking the sound of this crocodile rock?
I'm digging it for sure, Frank. The sound reminds me a lot of the Damned, who were part of the first wave of punk
Yeah,
and considered pioneers in that kind of goth rock and post-punk English movement. So I think this like smack of influence is right in line with when Echo and the Bunnymen were making this record and what was popular in the scene at the time.
yeah.
I got to tell you, man, it's a really cool track.
Track 7 is Rescue. This is the second single from the record, described as an attractive left field pop and reminiscent of early Cure. That was a quote, but this is interesting considering the first record for Cure was 78, and their second record, 17 Seconds, came out in April of 80, and this record came out in 80. Anyway, Mark, do you need some rescuing in your life?
No, I'm good. I think that Cure comparison is mostly due to that kind of like acoustic guitar tone.
Right.
Um, that's what I always associate with the Cure. But again, I just don't care for their hits, so I don't really know enough to say that that really defines their sound, even though I'm pretty sure it does. Anyways, that said, Rescue is a cool track. The lyrics are frantic, and the chorus is super catchy. I just really think this is a cool track.
Speaking of cool tracks, could be my favorite on the album. Track
Mm.
8, Villiers Terrace. Dark vibe yet layered with complementing piano that almost sounds like for a second like another song that came out in 1980, which is Springsteen's The River starts in E minor, this starts in E. So I mean there is some notes that they share, and I think that's what made me think of it. Anyway, Villiers Terrace is a tale of urgency and the observation of a rapid decline, with the backdrop being that of a junkie's place of residence. The buildup at the end of the piano, Mark, here with the piano, really gives us tune more anxiety and context too to the subject matter. I absolutely love it. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I love the way he says meta song,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's so cool. I dig when he changes the line from people rolling around on the carpet to people rolling around on my carpet,
Oh,
kind of
nice.
making himself implicit in the debauchery
Yes.
kind of at
Yeah.
hand. Really haunting, really cool track.
Yeah. Track 9, Read It in Books. Again, the bass is carrying the song here, man. No chorus here or catchy hooks, just a driving bass, guitar chords, and drums, followed by an almost pre chorus. Mark, you read any good books lately?
Frank, I'm actually nearly done reading Jurassic Park, as you know.
Yes.
But damn, this song has some sex appeal, doesn't it? I've read it in books. Who wants love without the looks? Damn.
Ooh.
And he's not
Ooh.
talking about physical looks. He's talking about those looks,
Oh, yeah.
right? The ones we give each other that say without words, like, hey, what's up? We
Yeah.
want to get down. Really cool track, man. I really dig how sexy this one was.
Track 10, Pictures on My Wall. This is the first single released from the band, and it reached actually 24 on the UK indie chart. I actually think this is the spookiest sounding of the tunes thus far. I almost feel like I felt like I was in a movie soundtrack at times, and the climax of the plot was just about to approach, and I felt like that's what the song was working towards. Mark, you got some cool pics on your wall, right?
Yeah, like one or two, but it's mostly like
Mhm.
art nobody else likes. Uh, I was really surprised that this was a single, let alone the first single. I don't dislike this track, but there are so many other pop forward songs that would have seemed more of the obvious choice to me. Uh, that said, they're really going for that spooky organ sound and that constant tone, like a radar going off in the background, just really adds to kind of like the spookiness of it. I mean, I really dig it.
Yeah.
It's a cool track. I dig it.
Well, all that jazz, Mark. Track
Uh-huh.
11. The arrangement of the song is pretty cool, especially with the way it begins. The Where the Hell Have You Been, with just Ian's voice, and the bass is really crystal clear, and it just hits all the right senses for me. So, Mark, are you into all that jazz?
No matter how hard I shake my fist, I just can't resist it, Frank. It's just it's a cool track. And
Yeah.
to your point, right, Les Patterson, Pattinson, excuse me, is really owning his place on bass here, just
Dude, right?
steady as can be. I really like the imagery here too. Someday when the sky turns black, it appears because it's what I feel. And there's a
Yeah.
gap when he sings those, so they don't appear like they're one line, one consecutive line, but they're just separated by a musical bridge. So when you put them together, it really changes
Yeah.
the darkness of what's going on and what all that jazz, right? Like just the chaos when people associate that term. Just so cool. Just
Yeah.
so cool.
Track 12, here we are. Happy Death Men. This is the longest track, clocking in at close to 5 minutes, which is fitting for an album closer. Not an abundance of lyrics here, with Ian just saying the same few lines over and over. At the 1 minute and 30-second mark, we get some chaos with the keys playing abruptly, then a few low notes on the guitar, and then we get horns. I think this repetition is supposed to build up on all the feelings that the album is trying to convey, from the overall darkness, anxiety, despair. I mean, we see it in the cover too. It really feels like a panic attack coming on. Mark, your thoughts on this album closer?
Yeah, I kind of love when an album has all its themes feel like they're crashing down on you for the closing track, but it's still a really solid song at the same time, and you feel the whole album really kind of like come together. These guys clearly understood the drama of
Yeah,
the record they were making, and closing it out like this is really just pretty perfect.
yeah. Wow. I mean, that was a quick album. It went fast, Mark. But give us your final thoughts on this record.
Absolutely. Frank, this one really surprised me. I wasn't sure what to expect out of Echo and the Bunnymen. I was thrown further off of my own bullshit assumptions by the title. And as I listened to it over this week, I was surprised time and time again at its pop sensibility, its punk sensibility, its rich tones, and its wonderfully macabre makeup.
Yeah.
Do It Clean was the first track that really just grabbed me. But tracks like Pride, Monkeys, Rescue, Villar's Terrace, Read It in Books are all really stunning in their own right. Crocodiles is a cool track, But I think when it comes to tracks that really speak to what this album is about, I think Stars and Stars
Ooh,
might have been what I picked, say, as like a title track.
so good.
But I'm in no way upset that they picked Crocodiles.
Yeah.
That's the only real like complaint I have about this. It's not necessarily a genre I find myself going to, and I don't know how much outside of Echo, how much I'm going to explore the genre, as it were. But I really dig it. 8 out of 10 for me. Check out this record. Frank?
Woohoo. All right. So, McCullough's an interesting guy. And in a few interviews I watched, I mean, first of all, you could barely understand because of his thick accent. So that makes it funny. But his musical influences, some of them were Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, The Doors, Leonard Cohen, David Bowie. Mark, you'd be happy to know that Echo actually had a feud with U2. Yes. Before Oasis versus Blur, we had this. McCullough stated that their music was for plumbers and bricklayers. Also stated how they would have never been liked in Liverpool, and we all know a fake when we see one. I'm assuming that was about Bono. Mark, doesn't this just make you like them that much more?
I gotta say, there's a chance that plumbers and bricklayers might like good music, but 100%, this makes me like them more.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed this record, and I think it may be one of the more underrated. I think they just may be one of the more underrated bands. Maybe it's the linking to their contemporaries, such as The Cure. They're kind of an outlier, though, because they weren't full on happy, sad. They showed the sadness and the despair, but they gave us 80s pop to kind of brighten up the day. And Ian's vocals helped with that for sure. Post punk is interesting because when it's mixed with new wave, it really kind of gives us 80s pop at the end of the day. There's a formula, yes, but Echo seems to keep us entertained and not tire us out with this record. Like, I wasn't getting tired at all. The songs come and go quickly, from the rock and do it clean to the sky view of The Stars Are Stars to the fast-paced Crocodiles, and of course the anxiety-ridden Villar's Terrace. This album kind of has it all that you would want if you're a fan of this particular music. So you can let this LP play in your house, and if it's nighttime, it could almost bring you to a trance in a good way. I really enjoyed this, Mark, and giving it a solid 8 out of 10. And yeah. So what do you have for us next week, Mark?
So this album really got me thinking about post-punk. And like I said, I'm so kind of like half familiar with the stars of that genre that I didn't really want to have to get into it and like do a Cure album and then like have people like shit on us because we weren't there at the right time to cry, right? So I thought, what does modern London post-punk sound like? So I found this band, High Vis, HIGHVIS, High Vis, and their 2019 album, No Sense, No Feeling. I found this 2 days ago. I've listened to it once. So we're getting into this guy together, folks at home. If you're listening to the podcast and you're going, well, I want to listen along, now's the time to do it. Because when you hear me review it, I've listened to it for a week. We'd love to hear your comments. What did you think of the album? What'd you think of Echo and the Bunnymen? Leave it in our comments. We'd love to hear more from you.
Nice. The 2019 album, No Sense, No Feeling, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Wowie zowie, Mark. I'm amped for it, as always. Thank you for listening out there, everyone. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, and stay safe out there.
Yeah, you're our only listener, so don't let anything happen to you, please. Frank and I need you so much. No, thank you so much, as always, for making it to the end. Won't you say it with me now? Oh, my. Oh, hell yes. Oh, bye-bye. You think they're still listening? I don't know.
Of course they are.